At the heart of eastern Zambia, the Luangwa River winds through a valley that is both the lifeline and lawmaker of its inhabitants. From the air, its channels twist like bronze threads laid over a green and ochre quilt, their shapes constantly redrawn by the rhythm of the seasons. In the wet months, the river breaks into a vast network of braids and side channels, flooding lowlands and feeding oxbow lagoons. It is a landscape of excess, then, where water moves almost lazily, spilling into hidden basins and seasonal marshes. As the rains fade and the heat deepens, that same generosity retracts. Channels narrow, lagoons isolate into shrinking pools, and the smooth arcs of the river's bends stand exposed, like ribs beneath the skin. This slow retreat is more than a change in scenery. It is the central mechanism that dictates the movement, behavior, and survival of every predator and prey in South Luangwa National Park. The transformation is ecological choreography. Each step in the river's decline tightens the living web, forcing grazers toward predictable grazing lawns and drink sites. Nutrient-rich silt left behind by receding water spurs, fresh grass growth along the edges, and herbivores, from impala and puku to massive buffalo, cannot resist the concentrated bounty. What to the grazers is opportunity, to predators is inevitability. The narrowing margins between sustenance and danger give rise to what ecologists call prey compression, a condition in which the animals being hunted have fewer places to hide and fewer escape routes to run. By the height of the dry season, the floodplain's open ground, once a vast and loosely patrolled space, condenses into corridors along sandy banks and dry channels, the very places ambush predators prefer to work. For leopards, this seasonal design offers a predictable grid of hunting lanes. They map these banks in their memory, padding silently between river loops and oxbow arcs, scent-marking trees that double as vantage points. Lions, whose energy costs are steep and whose meals come in bursts rather than a steady trickle, select territories where the river bends form natural backstops. Here, the herd animals must come to drink, and once they enter the funnel, flanked by reeds or mopane woodland, the outcome often hinges on mere seconds. Even wild dogs, with their coursing strategies better suited to open plains, find advantage along the floodplain terraces, where the firm footing and unobstructed sightlines favor speed and coordination. But the rules of this river's law are not set by geography alone. They are enforced and adjusted nightly by conditions that seasoned trackers know as predator weather. Heat is the first and most obvious influence. On cooler nights, prey animals can keep moving and feeding, staying alert for longer periods. But in the still, heavy warmth that lingers long after sunset in the dry months, their stamina falters more quickly, and the cost of a sprint to safety rises steeply. Humidity, often carried inland by the river itself, can muffle the sound of approaching footsteps, but also amplify scent, shifting the balance between visual stealth and olfactory detection. A soft, humid night is often the leopard's ally. A dry, windy night may give the prey's nose the edge. Wind direction is a currency here, spent and saved carefully. Predators will circle wide to approach with the wind in their face, ensuring that their scent is carried away from the target. This maneuvering is not random wandering, but a calculated investment in the hunt's success. River noise adds its own complexity. In some reaches, the current is sluggish and almost silent, so even the faint rustle of grass becomes a warning signal to the drinkers. In others, the rush over submerged sandbars or the slap of water against fallen trees drowns subtle noises, letting a lion's padded steps go unheard until it is too late. And then there is the moon. Under a full moon, the pale sandbanks and the open floodplain glow with enough light to flatten shadows, stripping predators of some of their concealment. Herbivores, in turn, stretch their feeding into the night, confident in the extra visibility. The new moon reverses these fortunes. Darkness deepens, silhouettes vanish into the void, and the predators regain their advantage. Studies in similar African systems show measurable spikes in hunting success during moonless nights, and South Luangwa is no exception. The moon is a silent arbiter here, tilting the terms of engagement between hunter and hunted without bias or warning. The Luangwa's seasonal pulse also sustains a complex nutrient cycle, that indirectly shapes predator strategy. As the river contracts, fish become trapped in lagoons and channels, attracting crocodiles and wading birds. Their concentrated activity draws scavengers, which in turn bring in opportunistic carnivores, including leopards willing to take fish or birds when larger prey is scarce. The flood recession silt also triggers flowering and seeding in riparian vegetation, drawing browsers like bushbuck and kudu into predator-rich zones. Even the sandy bars themselves, exposed to the sun, serve as warming grounds for reptiles, which can be ambushed by mongooses, raptors, and occasionally a leopard with a taste for unconventional meals. Every species in this ecosystem, from the smallest rodent to the apex predators, is in some way tethered to the river's shifting margins. For the predators, the Luangwa is not simply a source of water or a hunting ground. It is the architect of opportunity. It draws the map of movement, sets the stage for encounters, and dictates the tempo of hunts. And yet it offers no guarantees. A leopard may stalk for hours along the perfect sandbank, only to have the wind shift in the final seconds. A lion pride may position itself flawlessly at a drinking trail, only for the herd to choose a different bend that night. The law of the river is impartial and unyielding. It rewards adaptation, patience, and precision, and it punishes waste. In this way, the Luangwa is both a constant and a variable, its presence unwavering, its conditions in perpetual flux. Those who survive here do so not by resisting its changes, but by reading them, adjusting to them, and folding them into their daily rhythms. For the predators that rule this valley, the river is not just part of the habitat. It is the habitat's mind, its pulse, and its unseen hand, guiding every decision and shaping every life that depends on it. In South Luangwa, the leopard moves as though the very shape of the land was drawn for it. Every bend of the river, every ripple in the sand, every shadow cast by the great ebony and sausage trees becomes part of a living map that only the most patient eyes can read. These cats are not wanderers in the conventional sense. They are surveyors of invisible architecture. Their routes follow what might look, to the casual observer, like random paths between thickets and open banks. In truth, they are walking scent highways, narrow, predictable corridors worn into the earth by the movement of prey over years and seasons. Game trails thread through mopane groves and skirt the edges of dried lagoons, tracing the safest or fastest paths to food and water. A leopard learns these trails the way a mariner learns currents, noting the points where scent lingers longest, where hoofbeats carry farthest, and where the wind habitually changes direction at certain hours. Wind is both compass and cloak. The leopard's advance almost always arcs to bring the air into its face. Moving with the wind at its back is an invitation for failure. The faint musk of a carnivore can carry well over 100 meters in still night air, and far farther when a breeze is steady. This means the leopard's approach is rarely a straight line. It curves wide through cover, keeping a low profile, until the wind is clean and the quarry is unaware. On the wide, open sandbars that emerge as the dry season deepens, this strategy is even more pronounced. Sand holds scent differently than leaf litter, releasing it in sudden gusts when disturbed. To cross a sandbar directly is to risk exposure. To skirt its edges using the faint depressions of previous hoofprints is to blend the trail into background noise. When the cat closes to within striking distance, the geometry of the ambush begins. The forests along the Luangwa are not uniform walls of green, but mosaics of dense cover and open pockets. Ebony and sausage trees dominate many of these ambush zones, their thick trunks and low canopies creating deep pools of shade even in the brightest daylight. The leopard will often position itself just inside these shadow lines, at the precise point where its outline is erased against the dark backdrop. Here the physics of vision come into play. Many prey species have excellent motion detection, but relatively poor depth perception in low-contrast environments. A still predator in a shadow, particularly one whose rosetted coat breaks up its outline, becomes a phantom until it moves. Strike distances vary, but in the Luangwa, they often fall between 5 and 10 meters when cover is available right to the edge of the target's path. This is not arbitrary. At that range, the leopard can cover the gap in less than a second, moving at speeds over 50 kilometers per hour in its initial burst. Too far, and the attack becomes a chase, tipping the odds back toward the prey. Too close, and there is a greater risk of detection before the lunge. Even the angle of approach is calculated. A 30-degree line from the prey's forward path increases the chance of intercepting it without triggering an early alarm call. If the strike succeeds, another form of calculation begins. Unlike lions, which can defend a kill through numbers, a leopard is alone and must assume that at any moment the sound of the struggle or the scent of fresh blood could bring hyenas or even lions. The solution is to hoist. This act, while often reduced to a stock image in wildlife films, is in truth an extraordinary feat of biomechanics. An adult leopard weighing 60 kilograms may drag an antelope of equal or greater mass up a vertical trunk, relying on the anchoring power of its forelimbs and the deep flexion of its hindquarters. The claws are less like hooks and more like ice axes, driven into bark with the force of each pull. Muscles along the spine and shoulders work in unison, creating a rolling lift that keeps the carcass from snagging and allows the cat to pivot around branches. Tree selection is not random. The leopard prefers species with a branching structure that allows both ascent and concealment. Sausage trees, with their thick horizontal limbs, are ideal for supporting a kill and providing shade to mask it from aerial scavengers like vultures. The bark must also offer sufficient purchase. Smooth trunks risk a dangerous slip when bearing heavy weight. The chosen limb is usually 3 to 6 meters off the ground, high enough to foil hyenas, which are powerful but poor climbers, yet low enough to allow quick access in case the cat must descend rapidly to defend or reposition its prize. Once the kill is cached, the leopard becomes a steward of its own larder. Feeding is often staggered into short, intense sessions, with portions consumed quickly before the carcass is recovered with leaves or positioned deeper into the fork of the tree. This slows decomposition and reduces scent dispersal, buying days of security. Hyenas, whose sense of smell can detect carrion from kilometers away, will sometimes loiter under a leopard's tree for hours. If the kill is too heavy to move again, the leopard waits them out, conserving energy until darkness or opportunity drives the scavengers off. Every decision the leopard makes is filtered through the economics of energy. A failed hunt is not merely a missed meal, it is wasted calories that must be regained. In the intense heat of Luangwa's dry season, when daytime temperatures can exceed 40 degrees Celsius, the cost of activity rises sharply. The leopard's dense spotted coat offers excellent camouflage but also traps heat. To counter this, much of its hunting is pushed into the cooler hours of dusk, night and dawn, when thermoregulation demands less from the body and prey behavior is more predictable. Even here, the moon becomes a variable in the playbook. On full moon nights, the riverbanks and open floodplains are bathed in silver light, reducing shadow contrast and making stealth more difficult. Prey animals, aware of this advantage, often feed longer into the night, but they also maintain higher vigilance. Leopards adapt by shifting their hunting to the darkest intervals, when the moon is low or obscured by cloud, or by targeting areas of denser cover where light penetration is minimal. New moon nights offer the inverse, deep, enveloping darkness that allows bolder approaches, even across open ground, though at the cost of reduced visibility for the hunter as well. Here, the leopard's reliance on acute hearing and a wide field of low-light vision comes into full effect. Near water edges, where moonlight reflects off the surface and amplifies brightness, the leopard modifies its approach further. It may shadow the narrow strips of tall grass or use overhanging branches to break its outline. The rhythm of the water itself becomes an asset, masking the faint sounds of shifting paws or brushing whiskers. The river also attracts a concentration of prey, but it is a double-edged sword. Crocodiles and other predators stake claims here, and any kill made too close to the water risks being lost to them. A leopard in Luangwa knows this and often drags its prize well beyond the bank before attempting a hoist. This constant interplay of geography, sensory adaptation, and behavioral adjustment is what makes the leopard the undisputed tactician of Luangwa. Every step, every pause, every lunge is informed by a balance of risk and reward, honed over millennia of predation in a landscape where a single mistake can mean days without food. In the Valley of the Leopard Kings, survival is not merely a matter of strength or speed. It is the mastery of an ever-changing geometry, drawn and redrawn by wind, shadow, and the silent pull of the moon. In the dense riverine heart of South Luangwa, the making of a leopard hunter begins not with the hunt, but with the choice of a home. For a leopard mother, this is a calculation that rivals any kill she will make. The den is both cradle and fortress, the one place where she cannot afford a mistake. In a valley where every shadow has eyes and every scent carries a story, the den's position can mean the difference between raising the next generation and losing them before their first season ends. She may choose the hollowed base of an ancient ebony tree, its buttressed roots curling into a natural barricade, or the abandoned mound of a giant termite colony, baked solid by years of insect architecture. Termite mounds are not just walls of earth, they are climate-controlled fortresses. The intricate tunnel systems built by their former residents allow airflow that keeps the interior cool in the blistering dry season and dry when the rains come. This temperature stability is more than comfort. It is thermoregulation by proxy, sparing young cubs from the deadly heat stress that can claim them before they are strong enough to move. Drainage is as important as concealment. A den that collects rainwater becomes a trap, drowning its inhabitants during a single night of downpour. Even in the dry months, water can be a killer if it seeps in and carries scent trails to the door. Predators such as hyenas, whose olfactory senses can register chemical traces from several kilometers away, can detect the faintest hint of life. The leopard mother must therefore balance elevation, cover, and proximity to prey. Too close to the floodplain, and crocodiles from nearby lagoons could blunder into her refuge. Too deep in the Mopani woodland, and the distances to hunting grounds may leave cubs unattended for dangerous stretches. She must choose a place where her paths to food are short, but her enemies' paths to her young are long and uncertain. In the first weeks, the cubs are blind and helpless, their only protection the walls around them and the mother's vigilance. But as their eyes open and their legs strengthen, the apprenticeship begins. The first lessons are in movement. She will coax them into the sunlight for only brief intervals, encouraging short bursts of play that mimic the mechanics of stalking. Paws that swipe at each other in mock combat are rehearsing the precision strikes that will one day be aimed at the throat or spine of a fleeing antelope. Clumsy pounces on siblings train the timing needed to close the final meters of a hunt. In these moments, the boundaries between play and survival blur completely. Climbing drills follow as soon as their claws can grip bark. A leopard's arboreal skill is not innate perfection, but the result of repeated trial and error. The mother leads them to low branches, demonstrating the controlled grip and release of each paw, the coiling of hind legs before a leap, the silent descent that leaves no branch quivering. These climbs are not just about escape from ground-based threats. They are early introductions to the art of the hoist, the ability to move heavy prey into the safety of a tree, away from hyenas and lions. By the time they are weaned, the cubs must be able to balance not just their own weight, but eventually the weight of their survival. Feeding lessons are perhaps the most tightly controlled aspect of this education. The mother will bring kills to the den or nearby cover, allowing the cubs to feed under her watch. Here they learn that eating in the wild is as much about restraint as it is about consumption. Gorging in the open attracts scavengers. Leaving food unguarded risks losing it entirely. She regulates their access, nudging them away from the carcass when she senses approaching danger, caching remains in a tree or dragging them to thicker cover. In doing so, she is teaching them to see a kill not as a single event, but as a resource to be managed over time. The risk map in which these lessons unfold is invisible to the cubs, but constantly updated in their mother's mind. She knows the patrol patterns of the local hyena clan, where their whoops echo most often across the valley. She has memorized the routes lions take from river to woodland, and the scent markers left by rival leopards whose territories brush against hers. She understands the shifting boundaries of danger, how a lagoon that is safe one week can become a crocodile's hunting ground the next after the rains push new fish into its waters. Her movements with the cubs are never casual. Every relocation, every route is a tactical decision shaped by this internal map. One of her most critical defenses against these threats is the management of scent. Leopards are masters of scent overmarking, deliberately placing their own scent over existing markers to mask vulnerable signs. This strategy serves two purposes. It confuses other predators about the true occupant of an area, and it can delay the discovery of cubs by potential infanticidal males. Male leopards, driven by reproductive strategy rather than malice, will sometimes kill unrelated cubs to bring a female back into estrus. By overmarking and rotating den sites, the mother stretches the time it takes for her cubs to be detected and targeted. Temporal partitioning is another subtle but effective tool. She shifts her hunting hours in response to predator activity, sometimes leaving in the early afternoon rather than dusk if lion movement is heavy at night, or hunting later into the morning when nocturnal threats have retreated to rest. This flexibility ensures that she can feed her young without drawing attention to the den during peak predator traffic. It also teaches the cubs, indirectly, that survival is not about adhering to fixed schedules, but about responding to the rhythms of the landscape. As the cubs grow, the pressure to disperse builds. The Luangwa is a valley dense with predators, and territories are finite. A young leopard that lingers too long in its natal range risks constant conflict with its own mother, with neighboring males, and with older, more established females. Dispersal is not simply eviction, it is the final examination of their apprenticeship. By the time they leave, they must navigate a world where every scent post tells a story of ownership, every patch of cover may conceal a competitor, and every water source is both a lure and a threat. Some will travel dozens of kilometers before finding an unclaimed pocket of territory. Others will attempt to carve space at the edges of overlapping ranges, surviving in the shadow of more dominant individuals. The mother's investment in their training ends not with a farewell, but with the quiet knowledge that their survival will hinge on decisions she has rehearsed with them since their first wobbly steps. The termite mound, the tree roots, the climbing branch, the cached kill, each was more than shelter or sustenance. Each was a lesson in reading the terrain, in balancing opportunity against danger, in turning the unpredictability of Luangwa into a pattern that can be understood and exploited. For the apprentices of the night, the inheritance is not land or prey, but the ability to live by a playbook written in scent, shadow, and silence. At night, in the Luangwa Valley, when the air hangs heavy with river mist and the ground still radiates the day's stored heat, a different rhythm takes hold. The forest edges and open floodplains belong to the cats in silence, but the moment the first distant whoop echoes across the flats, the balance shifts. That rising, quavering call, the signature sound of the spotted hyena, is not random noise. It is a coded broadcast, a beacon carrying through the still, humid air for several kilometers. Each whoop tells others where the caller is and, more importantly, hints at why they should come. In the darkness, these sounds form a crude but effective map, a network of signals that allows the clan to triangulate opportunities without ever seeing them. A hyena clan is not a loose collection of scavengers. It is a highly structured social system, rooted in a matriarchal hierarchy where the dominant females outrank even the most seasoned males. Territories are large, overlapping in places with those of other predators, but the clan knows the shape of its own range as intimately as a leopard knows its scent-marked paths. Within that range, the calls act as a form of acoustic triangulation. When one hyena hears another's whoop from the west and a third answers from the south, the group can quickly narrow down the likely location of an event. Perhaps a carcass, perhaps a kill in progress. In dense woodland, where line of sight is limited, sound becomes the fastest means of assembling a strike force. This coordination is the foundation of kleptoparasitism, the practice of stealing food from other predators. For a leopard, this is the constant shadowy threat hanging over every successful hunt. The moment the struggle is over and the air is thick with the smell of blood, the clock begins to tick. In the cool, still air after sunset, scent travels quickly, and the hyena's nose is one of the most sensitive among mammals, able to detect carrion from several kilometers away. If the kill is on the ground, the leopard has only minutes before the first dark shapes materialize, loping in with a casual confidence that comes from knowing they have the advantage on the flat. Whether the leopard defends or abandons its prize depends on several factors: the size and weight of the kill, the proximity of a suitable tree, the number of hyenas, and the terrain. A heavy kill, such as an adult puku, might take a leopard more than 10 minutes to drag up a trunk. If the hyenas arrive before the hoist is complete, the leopard must weigh the risk of injury against the value of the meal. One hyena is often worth confronting. 3 or more can overwhelm the leopard simply by persistence, rushing from multiple angles until the cat either retreats or makes a mistake. Injury is not an abstract danger. A torn tendon or broken canine can end a leopard's hunting career, turning a dominant predator into a ghost of starvation within weeks. When the hyenas win, the transition from hunt to feast is instantaneous. The clan consumes with an efficiency that is unmatched in the valley. A zebra carcass can be reduced to bone and hide within 20 minutes. Their jaw power, capable of exerting pressures exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, allows them to crack open even the thickest leg bones, extracting marrow that other predators leave behind. In doing so, they perform an ecological service as critical as any hunt. By processing bones, ligaments, and hide, they accelerate decomposition and nutrient return to the soil. The calcium-rich remains that they cannot digest are deposited elsewhere in their range, enriching the soil and, indirectly, the plant life that herbivores depend on. A kill site taken over by hyenas does not remain theirs alone for long. The noise draws in a secondary wave of scavengers, white-backed vultures spiraling in the moonlight, marabou storks moving awkwardly on the ground, black-backed jackals slipping along the periphery. Even fish benefit when kills happen near water. Bones and scraps dragged into the shallows provide a brief but intense pulse of nutrients to aquatic ecosystems. In this way, a single predation event can ripple outward, feeding dozens of species, many of which never encountered the prey alive. For the leopard, hyena pressure forces behavioral adaptations that are as strategic as they are physical. Catching kills high in trees is the most obvious countermeasure, but even this is adjusted depending on the hyena threat level. In areas where hyena density is high, leopards choose trees with higher first branches and thicker trunks to make hoisting more efficient and harder to disrupt. They may also feed in shorter, more frequent bouts, taking in as much as possible quickly before leaving the carcass to rest and avoid drawing attention with movement. In zones where hyena patrols are predictable, leopards shift hunting activity to windows when the scavengers are less active, often in the deep hours before dawn or in mid-morning when the hyenas have retreated to rest. Hyena presence also influences prey choice. A leopard, aware of nearby scavenger activity, might target smaller animals it can drag into cover or a tree in seconds rather than minutes. Impala and bushbuck, for instance, can be secured more quickly than warthog or large antelope, even if the latter offer more meat. This is the constant trade-off between energy gain and risk exposure, one that the leopard recalculates with each opportunity. The moon cycle adds another variable. On full moon nights, when hyenas can cover ground more confidently in bright conditions, leopards often retreat to denser cover to feed, avoiding open floodplain kills that can be spotted from a distance. The hyenas themselves are not immune to the consequences of this competition. Failed thefts waste time and energy that could have been spent hunting or foraging. Spotted hyenas are capable hunters in their own right, bringing down wildebeest, zebra, and buffalo calves through endurance chases that can last several kilometers. Yet their willingness to steal from leopards, lions, and even wild dogs is an evolved balance. Stealing offers large returns with minimal energy investment, but only if the clan can coordinate and outnumber the original predator. The risk lies in overcommitting to an attempt that yields nothing, leaving them hungry and farther from productive hunting grounds. Perhaps the most telling effect of hyena-leopard competition is the way it shapes the nocturnal soundscape of the Luangwa. A distant whoop can change the behavior of animals that are not even the intended target. Antelope pause their grazing, elephants adjust their positions around calves, and other predators listen to assess whether the disturbance is worth investigating. In this way, the hyena's call is not just communication within the clan, it is an announcement to the entire ecosystem that the balance of ownership may soon change hands. Fog intensifies this drama. On nights when moisture from the river rolls over the floodplain in a thick, muffling layer, visibility drops to a few meters and sound behaves differently. The damp air flattens scent plumes, forcing hyenas to rely more heavily on hearing. Their calls, resonating in the heavy air, seem closer and more urgent, and predators like leopards must make faster decisions about whether to defend or abandon. Fog also conceals the approach of the scavengers until they are nearly within striking distance, collapsing the time window a leopard might use to secure its kill. Through these constant contests, the hyena becomes more than just a thief in the leopard's world. It is an ever-present force shaping the strategies, timing, and even the physical choices of its feline rival. Each whoop, each loping silhouette in the mist is a reminder that in Luangwa, the end of the hunt is not the end of the struggle. The carcass may feed one, or it may feed many, but it will never go to waste. And in that certainty lies the peculiar, indispensable role of the cleanup guild. In the Luangwa Valley, the river does more than carry water. It draws the battle lines. Its great looping meanders are not random bends carved by time, but strategic arenas chosen and defended by the lions who dominate this floodplain. These river loops, with their natural bottlenecks and defined approach routes, become the courts where disputes between predator and prey are settled. For a pride of lions, territory along these bends offers the perfect combination of resources: shade from towering ebony and mahogany trees, a constant flow of animals to the water's edge, and multiple ambush points where escape routes can be sealed within seconds. The lions are not merely occupying this ground, they are shaping their hunting strategies around the river's architecture. Placement is everything. A pride will anchor itself near a loop where the bank dips gently enough to encourage buffalo to approach, but is hemmed in by reeds or woodland thickets that act as natural flanks. This terrain offers cover to the ambushers and funnels prey along predictable paths. The lions know these approach routes intimately. Some have used the same drinking path traps for years, fine-tuning their positioning with each hunt. One or two lionesses may crouch low in the reeds, invisible until they burst forward. Others take positions behind the backstop of the river itself, cutting off the retreat of animals startled into turning back. The final attack is often a coordinated rush and crush, with speed and force overwhelming the lead animals before the herd's defense can fully form. For the buffalo, these loops are as much a trap as they are a necessity. Heat drives them here, the kind of dense, oppressive heat that builds in the valley as the dry season deepens. In the late afternoon, the air above the sandbanks seems to shimmer, and water becomes more than a thirst quencher. It is a survival imperative. The buffalo's heavy bodies store heat quickly, and without frequent drinking and wallowing, their core temperature can climb to dangerous levels. But every approach to the water's edge forces them into the predator's zone. This is the core of the buffalo's risk calculus. Balance the life-sustaining act of drinking against the mortal danger of stepping into an ambush corridor. The herd's defense is formidable when fully engaged. Mature bulls flank the group, and the herd's cohesion is a weapon, with animals wheeling to face attackers in a wall of horns. But that defense takes precious seconds to organize, and in those seconds, a lioness can latch onto the muzzle or throat of an isolated cow, or a young bull can be dragged to the ground before help arrives. The moonlight, or lack of it, alters this equation. On nights under a bright full moon, buffalo can spot movement earlier and tighten their formation before lions close the gap. Under a new moon, however, the floodplain is swallowed in darkness, and the first awareness of an attack might be the sound of reeds parting at speed. Lions, whose eyesight in low light far outperforms that of buffalo, press this advantage relentlessly on moonless nights, timing their charges to the moment when confusion is at its peak. The dynamics along these loops are further complicated by other predators. Leopards use the same riverine cover to stalk smaller prey, but they give way to lions in space and time. This temporal partitioning means that a leopard hunting at dawn or late morning will vacate a loop as lion activity increases, avoiding direct conflict over territory. Wild dogs, too, skirt the edges of lion-controlled loops, aware that a single misstep could bring a fatal encounter with a pride defending its kill site. These predators occasionally gain from the lion's work, scavenging the remains of a half-consumed buffalo once the pride has eaten its fill and moved on. This side scavenging is a delicate business. The scavengers must arrive after the lions have departed, but before the carcass is stripped by vultures, hyenas, or decomposition. The success of a river loop ambush relies on what might be called the physics of the kill zone. The river itself acts as a backstop, preventing prey from fleeing in that direction. On one side, a wall of reeds or thick woodland closes off lateral escape, while the lions themselves form the remaining barriers. Wind direction determines the final arrangement. Lions will always position themselves so the wind carries scent away from their intended target. This often means approaching from downwind through dense cover, a maneuver that might add minutes to the setup, but pays off in surprise.
Prey scenting a lion too early can abort the entire hunt before it begins. The court analogy extends beyond structure to roles.
Lionesses, with their speed and agility, are the primary chasers and tacklers. Males, heavier and slower but immensely powerful, often take positions where a charge can be short and decisive, using brute force to topple larger buffalo. They also act as enforcers, deterring other predators from interfering and protecting the pride's claim to the kill. Once the buffalo is down, the kill site becomes a contested space. Vultures may gather in the canopy above, waiting for the moment when they can descend. Hyenas patrol the perimeter, gauging whether the pride's numbers or condition might allow them to test the boundaries. For the buffalo, surviving an encounter at the river loop is not just about avoiding the lions, it is about reading the signs before stepping into danger. The herd may pause well before the water's edge, scenting the air, listening for the rustle of reeds that betrays a crouched predator. Sometimes they send a few younger bulls ahead to test the ground, a living probe into the zone where survival hangs in the balance. The decision to drink or retreat is made in moments, but it carries consequences that ripple through the herd's future. A successful defense reinforces group cohesion and may deter the lions from targeting the same herd for days. A failed defense can embolden the predators, making future ambushes more aggressive and frequent. The rhythm of these encounters is as much a part of the Luangwa's seasonal cycle as the flood pulse of the river itself. As the dry season progresses and water holes away from the main river dry up, the buffalo's dependence on the loops intensifies. Lions, in turn, concentrate their efforts there, knowing that prey will come with predictable regularity. In wetter months, when water is more dispersed, both predator and prey range more widely, and the sharp, high-stakes confrontations at the loops become less frequent. But when the river is the last reliable source, the loops become crucibles of survival, places where the skills, strength, and strategies of two of Africa's most formidable species are tested against each other. In this court, there is no impartial referee, no mercy rule. The river offers both life and death in the same breath, its bends shaping the battlefield in ways neither predator nor prey can ignore.
The lions read the terrain like a playbook. The buffalo read the air like a verdict waiting to be delivered.
Every approach, every charge, every retreat is part of an ongoing trial, where the verdict changes nightly. And in the Luangwa, the river always has the final word. When the Luangwa River begins to fracture under the late dry season sun, its once wide channels narrow into shallow fords and isolated pools. These choke points, stripped of the river's full flow, become more than just passages. They are bottlenecks where survival is decided in seconds. For the herbivores of the valley, from antelope and zebra to the heavier-footed buffalo, these narrowing corridors are compulsory crossings. The floodplains, woodlands, and grazing lawns they depend on are often separated by water, and with each step into the channel, they enter a realm where the rules change. The steep banks, silted shallows, and collapsing edges rob prey of speed and agility, forcing them to wade or swim through an element they are not designed to master. For the Nile crocodile, it is the perfect arena, an unavoidable toll gate on the prey's daily routes, where payment is often made in blood. The crocodiles of Luangwa are not scattered randomly along its length. They cluster with a strategist's precision, concentrating where geology and hydrology conspire to trap their quarry. A collapsing pool, for example, is more than just a remnant of the river's retreat. Its edges crumble under the weight of crossing animals, sending them into deeper water where their footing vanishes. Even in the shallows of a ford, the uneven sand and sudden drop-offs can cause a stumble. And a stumble here is an open invitation to a predator whose entire body is built for a single violent act. Crocodiles position themselves where currents converge, or where the riverbed channels movement into predictable lanes. In these places, the advantage shifts so heavily toward the ambusher that escape, once contact is made, becomes the exception rather than the rule. Beneath the surface, the crocodile's approach is a masterclass in energy economy and sensory adaptation. Despite its bulk, it can move without creating a ripple, propelled by slow sweeps of the tail, while its body remains almost entirely still. The eyes and nostrils, perched high on the skull, break the surface like the periscopes of a submarine, giving it vision and breath, while the rest of its form remains hidden. Specialized pressure receptors, integumentary sensory organs, stud the skin around its jaws, able to detect the faintest vibrations in the water. This allows a crocodile to sense the splash of a hoof or the ripple of movement long before it sees its target. When the moment comes, the attack is explosive. The initial burst is powered by the massive tail, generating an acceleration that can cover several meters in a fraction of a second. At close range, usually within 2 to 3 meters, the crocodile's strike is almost impossible to avoid. Its jaws slam shut with a force exceeding 2,000 pounds per square inch, a grip so strong that bone fractures instantly. The strike is rarely about killing outright. It is about control. Once the prey is seized, the crocodile uses its own weight and the drag of the water to unbalance it. If the water is deep enough, the predator will initiate the death roll, a violent spin that disorients, drowns, and tears flesh. This roll is not a mindless thrash, but a biomechanical adaptation. By twisting its muscular body around the anchored grip of its jaws, the crocodile can remove limbs or large chunks of meat for easier swallowing, or rapidly incapacitate prey that is too large to submerge in one effort. Timing is critical, and here thermoregulation plays a hidden role in the crocodile's success. Being ectothermic, crocodiles draw heat from their environment rather than generating it internally. In the early morning, they bask on sandbanks, absorbing warmth to power the muscles needed for a rapid strike. Midday heat, however, can drive them back into the water, where body temperatures stabilize, and they can wait for hours without expending much energy. The most dangerous times for prey are often the late afternoon and early evening, when crocodiles have recharged in the sun and the day's crossings concentrated remaining water points. In cooler months or during overcast days, activity may shift toward periods when the water retains enough warmth to keep muscle efficiency high. A successful strike triggers what ecologists call a kill site cascade. The violence at the crossing attracts attention far beyond the immediate participants. Raptors, such as tawny eagles and African fish eagles, appear within minutes, circling low to watch for scraps or disoriented fish flushed by the struggle. Marabou storks and yellow-billed storks wade in the shallows nearby, ready to snatch up morsels that drift free. On the banks, black-backed jackals may edge closer, testing whether they can dart in to seize a fallen piece of flesh. As night falls, spotted hyenas arrive, drawn by the scent of blood carried downwind. They patrol the banks, hoping for a carcass abandoned or dragged to shore. In some cases, leopards take advantage of the distraction, shadowing the commotion in hopes of scavenging remains or ambushing smaller animals that gather in the periphery. Not all kills are consumed immediately. Crocodiles are known to cache carcasses underwater, wedging them between submerged branches or rocks, allowing time for the flesh to soften. This behavior not only facilitates consumption, but also prolongs the feeding opportunity in a competitive environment. The presence of a submerged cache can keep scavengers lingering in the area for days, subtly altering the behavior of other animals that might use the crossing. Some herbivores may avoid the site entirely, diverting to less favorable routes, while predators like hyenas may check it regularly, creating an ongoing focal point of predator-prey interaction. The intensity of these choke points changes with the seasons. In the dry months, as water sources dwindle, crossings become fewer but more predictable, concentrating prey and predator alike. Strike density, the frequency of attacks per unit area,
rises sharply, and some crocodiles may feed multiple times in a single day. During the rains, the dynamic shifts. Rising waters flood the fords, dispersing prey over a wider area. The crocodiles, now spread thin, must hunt opportunistically, often turning their focus to fish or aquatic birds. The swollen river also reopens migration routes, allowing prey to bypass traditional choke points entirely. This seasonal redistribution forces crocodiles to adjust not just their locations, but their hunting strategies, trading the certainty of ambush corridors for the broader but less predictable bounty of a river in flood. For the animals of Luangwa, the crossings are both lifeline and hazard. They connect grazing to shelter, dry ground to water, one feeding territory to another. Yet each step into the shallows is a calculated gamble, a silent wager placed against an unseen predator whose patience is measured in hours, days, even weeks. The crocodile asks for no more than the river already demands: respect for the rules of a system where every passage has its price. Here the toll is paid not in coin or time, but in flesh, a crossing tax collected in the deep green silence beneath the surface. As the Luangwa sun begins its slow descent, the glare softens over the wide floodplain terraces. The afternoon heat, once oppressive and still, starts to bleed away in shimmering waves. Long shadows stretch across the open alluvial flats, where the baked ground has hardened into a surface firm enough to bear the pounding strides of Africa's most relentless pursuit hunters, the African wild dogs. These terraces, formed over millennia by seasonal flooding and silt deposition, are not simply scenic spaces between river and woodland. They are running tracks, engineered by geology and shaped by climate, where speed can be sustained, sightlines stretch for hundreds of meters, and every curve or rise can be used as a tactical advantage. Pursuit hunters thrive in environments that reward endurance and coordination, and here the wild dog's evolutionary design comes into its own. The firm footing allows their narrow, spring-loaded legs to drive without the energy loss of deep sand or the unpredictability of loose scree. Their vision, tuned for motion detection, sweeps across the terrace, catching the flicker of an impala's ear or the ripple of grass where puku move in loose groups. Open ground also favors their communication system. High-pitched chirps and tail signals pass cleanly between pack members without being swallowed by dense vegetation. At these distances, every signal counts. A hunt that begins in disarray often ends in failure. The pack itself is an organism in constant motion, flexing and reshaping depending on the target, the season, and the condition of its members. This is the essence of the fission-fusion dynamic, small units splitting off to probe for prey, only to merge again in a coordinated strike. A group may fan out into a wide front to flush hidden animals into the open, or contract into a tight spearhead to drive a herd toward an unfavorable position. Relay hunting is a signature move. A lead dog will press the chase until its muscles begin to burn, then fall back as a fresh runner slides forward to keep the pressure unbroken. This baton passing style is more than just efficient. It is an energy-saving adaptation that prevents prey from recovering its breath between sprints. Flanking is equally critical. While one line of dogs pushes directly from behind, others arc out wide, reading the escape vectors that the prey will likely take. This is not guesswork. Prey species tend to break toward familiar cover or known water, and the dogs have learned these tendencies over repeated hunts. The flanking runners aim not to intercept instantly, but to arrive in the prey's path at the precise moment when its stamina is spent. In the last 50 meters, when muscles are flooded with lactic acid and the animal's movements lose precision, the trap closes from multiple sides. During the denning season, the equation shifts. With pups to feed and protect, the pack modifies its prey selection. Large, dangerous animals that could injure a hunter, such as adult kudu or waterbuck, are taken less often. Instead, the dogs focus on medium-sized antelope that can be subdued quickly and divided into portions small enough to be carried back to the den in the stomachs of returning adults. Regurgitation feeding is their delivery system, allowing the pups to receive partially digested meat without the dangers of traveling to a kill site. This efficiency ensures that the energy spent on a hunt translates directly into survival for the next generation. But even in the openness of the terraces,
the wild dogs do not have uncontested dominion. Lions, with their territorial dominance, are both competitors and lethal threats. The dogs read lion presence through scent and spoor, avoiding active pride zones during peak hunting hours. An encounter with lions can be catastrophic. A single male can kill multiple dogs in minutes, not for food, but as a means of removing competition. The dog's primary defense is avoidance, shifting routes, hunting at the fringes of lion territories, and exploiting windows of low lion activity. This avoidance is not cowardice but pragmatism. Survival depends as much on selecting the right enemies as it does on choosing the right prey. Leopards pose a different kind of challenge. They are not direct threats to adult wild dogs in the way lions are, but they guard their kills fiercely. A pack stumbling upon a leopard's cached carcass must decide whether the numbers and confidence of the group are enough to drive the solitary cat away. Sometimes they succeed, their sheer harassment forcing the leopard to abandon the meal. Other times, a leopard's elevated position in a tree and its willingness to stand ground make the cost of confrontation too high. These tense standoffs can end without a bite exchanged, each predator calculating that the risk outweighs the gain. The timing of a hunt is not a matter of preference but of physiology. Both predator and prey are prisoners of their own thermoregulation. The wild dog's advantage peaks when the sun sits low, casting the terrace into partial shade, while the ground still holds enough warmth to avoid chilling their muscles. At this hour, prey animals are at their most vulnerable to fatigue. The heat of the day has already taxed their systems. Water loss through panting and sweat has reduced their ability to dump heat during exertion. As the dogs give chase, the prey's core temperature rises faster than it would in the cool of morning. Narrowing the window before overheating begins to impair coordination and decision-making. The dogs, with their efficient cooling through rapid panting and minimal fur density on their limbs and bellies, can push harder for longer without crossing that dangerous threshold. The open terrace also influences the prey's tactics. Here, there is no dense thicket to disappear into, no steep slope to slow pursuit. The only hope is to reach the floodplain fringe, where uneven ground and scattered trees can break the dog's formation. But the same features that give prey a chance can also seal their fate. A sudden turn toward the river may run directly into a flanking line. A break toward cover can funnel them into a choke point where multiple dogs converge. The hunt becomes a contest of predictive behavior. The prey trying to surprise the pursuers, the dogs anticipating every escape maneuver. This balance of speed, stamina, and strategy has made the wild dogs of the Luangwa terraces among the most effective hunters in Africa, with success rates far exceeding those of lions or leopards. Yet their dominance in the chase is fragile, dependent on the maintenance of open ground, healthy prey populations, and the delicate avoidance of larger predators. Changes in the river's flood regime, shifts in prey migration patterns, or increases in lion density can all alter the viability of these running tracks. The terrace, for all its apparent permanence, is a living part of the ecosystem cycle, renewed and reshaped by each flood season. As dusk deepens into night and the silhouettes of the pack blur against the horizon, the terraces fall silent again. The dust settles, hoofprints and pawprints already softening in the evening breeze. Whether the hunt ends in a kill or an empty sprint, the lessons are logged in the collective memory of the pack. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again, on the same wide ground that has served as both stage and proving ground for generations of these tireless hunters, the dusk sprinters of Luangwa's floodplain. When daylight slips from the Luangwa Valley, the rules of the ecosystem change with a precision that is neither written nor spoken, but understood by every creature that moves within its reach. In the absence of the sun's glare, the air cools just enough for muscles to work harder and longer without overheating. Humidity swells upward from the river, carrying scents more densely, holding them close to the ground. The wind, which in the afternoon can gust unpredictably across the floodplains, often settles into gentle, predictable streams that a hunter can read like an open page. The moon becomes the most visible of these nightly drivers, its cycles not just a backdrop, but an architect of opportunity. A full moon flattens shadows, robbing predators of the depth they need to remain unseen.
prey senses stretch further into the night, their eyes and ears tuned to the amplified light. Under a new moon, darkness becomes a partner to the hunter, cloaking movement and compressing the reaction time of the pursued into fractions of a second. Even the noise of the river plays its part. At high flow, the constant rush masks the sounds of approaching predators. When the water is low, every movement in the reed stands out like a warning bell. Within this shifting mosaic, there exists what can be thought of as the silence economy. In many wildlife landscapes, especially those visited heavily by people, nocturnal activity is diluted or altered by the hum of human presence. The growl of engines, the beam of headlights, the scent trails of vehicles and foot traffic lingering in the air. In Luangwa, areas where such intrusion is minimal become strongholds of authenticity, places where hunts unfold with their full suite of natural cues and countermeasures. Low light conditions reduce visual disturbance, but low human pressure removes the subtle disruptions that can ripple through a predator's decision-making. In these quiet zones, leopards are less hesitant to use open sandbanks, lions linger longer at water's edge, and prey rely on their ancient sensory hierarchies rather than learned responses to human patterns. The silence economy is not an abstract concept. It is measurable in the efficiency of kills, the boldness of approaches, and the complexity of the predator-prey dance that can only emerge when both sides are responding to each other, unfiltered. This dynamic depends on more than the nightly theater. It relies on the physical integrity of the land. The Luangwa is held together by corridors, dry riverbeds that connect feeding grounds to water, ebony belts that stitch together the open plains with the deeper woodlands. These corridors are not decorative strips of habitat. They are the arterial routes along which life moves. For a leopard, a dry riverbed offers a silent, concealed highway between territories. For an elephant, it is a migratory passage. For antelope, a predictable access point to water. Disrupt these routes, and the system begins to fray. Snaring in these bottlenecks is especially devastating, not only because it directly removes animals from the ecosystem, but because it converts safe transit points into death zones. The absence of one or two key individuals in a predator population can ripple upward and downward through the web. Prey species adjust their ranges, scavengers lose a source of food, even plant communities change as browsing patterns shift. At a larger scale, the timing and reliability of the Luangwa's flood pulse is the metronome by which the entire system keeps time. In years when the rains are steady and predictable, the river swells and retreats in a rhythm that animals have evolved to anticipate. Breeding cycles, migrations, and hunting patterns all slot neatly into this pulse. Under climate variability, the beat begins to falter. Rains may come late, shortening the flood season, or arrive in destructive bursts that scour away the very channels that sustain dry season pools. A mistimed flood can strand fish before they spawn, starve crocodiles, and shift prey concentrations in ways that break the finely tuned schedules of predators. When the water recedes too soon, dry season bottlenecks form earlier, increasing hunting pressure beyond what prey populations can sustain. When floods linger, the lush abundance can disperse animals so widely that even apex predators struggle to find and secure meals. Securing the leopard's throne in this valley, and by extension the stability of the entire predator guild, rests on confronting these pressures with precision. Community-led protection has proven to be one of the most resilient strategies. Local stewardship ensures that the people who know the land best are those making daily decisions about its use. Anti-snaring patrols, when staffed and supported by these communities, transform poaching hotspots into safe corridors again. Seasonal monitoring of the flood pulse allows both conservation managers and local residents to predict and respond to shifts in animal movement before the balance tips. By aligning livelihood opportunities with ecological health, whether through carefully managed tourism, sustainable harvesting, or direct conservation. Employment, the incentive to keep the corridors open and the silence economy intact, becomes tangible. The night law of Luangwa is not static. It is written and rewritten every dusk, in the paw prints on a sandbank, in the sudden silence of a herd at the scent of danger, in the routes a leopard chooses under different moons. It is enforced by conditions as grand as the seasonal flood and as subtle as the direction of a 10-knot breeze. And while it may appear timeless to a passing observer, its survival into the future is the product of constant negotiation between predator and prey, between river and land, between human need and the wild's demands. What comes next depends on whether those negotiations continue to favor the delicate balances that have allowed this valley to remain one of the last true strongholds of Africa's great predators. If they do, the leopard will keep its throne, the lions will keep their courts, and the night will remain a stage where the law belongs not to any single species, but to the intricate, ever-evolving whole.